2003, only 2 years after the release of the Strokes' debut album, Is This It?, the band would release their sophomore album, Room on Fire, a fantastic follow-up to their first that improves on their sound in every way. In today's video, I'm going to be analyzing Room on Fire as a whole, talking about the impact on the band this album had, as well as the impact of the album on the world. Also, 80% of my viewers are not subscribed, so if you could hit that red button, it would really help me out, as we are nearing 1K. But without further ado, my name is Stemp, and this is a tribute to Room on Fire. After touring for Is This It?, the band's debut album, the band almost immediately started working on Room on Fire. Initially, they entered the studio with Radiohead's longtime producer Nigel Godrich, but fired him shortly after, as Godrich and Julian were too similar, both control freaks, and couldn't agree on how the album should sound. Scrapping the initial sessions, the band restarted, and did so by replacing Nigel with the Is This It producer, Gordon Raphael. They had about 3 months of studio time to get the record done, and they had new ideas as well as some leftovers from their days before Is This It? But because of time crunch, the band didn't have nearly as much time to test and perfect these tracks. Nick Valenci stated that the album probably would have came out better if they had just a couple more weeks. But the band did what they could in that time. Julian had noticeably improved his songwriting skills, Nick had become more experimental with his guitar work, and the band seemed to be in better shape than ever. The recording time reached its end, and the album was released on October 28th of 2003. The reviews were mostly positive, as the band did what they did best. Kept the signature sound of the Strokes that had been established in their previous outing while improving and pushing the boundaries of their techniques in tight 3-ish minute tracks. It sounded like a natural progression for the band. But of course there were some critics who didn't quite like it, as they thought it was too similar to the debut and they didn't experiment enough. Of course now, with hindsight, seeing that their next release, First Impressions of Earth, was rather different from these first two outings, the critics would say almost the opposite thing, that experimentation was bad and that they should have stuck to their original sound. Kind of ironic, I guess. The lyrics of Room on Fire are pretty simplistic, which is why the format for this video is slightly different from the usual Tribute to videos that I do on this channel. In fact, almost all of the tracks refer to relationship issues. Others reflect on the band's newfound fame, like in Whatever Happened. This track, which is presumably about a relationship with a woman only with Julian for his fame, lyrics like I want to be beside her, she want to be admired, while alternatively both the title and first line of the song seem to refer to the band itself, with a spin on the popular tabloid clickbait title line of Whatever Happened to Blank, usually referring to a celebrity long after they've fallen out of the limelight. As if the band was predicting that they would fall off and be forgotten, as Julian Casablancas sings in that first line. Most likely, though, what this track is about is the fear of their second album not living up to the first. If you interpret she in these lyrics as the general media, the song begins to make more sense. Even another verse later in the track seems to refer to Julian's stress for the album. Oh Tennessee, what did you write? I come together in the middle of the night. That's an ending that I can't write, 'cause I've got you to let me down. This most likely refers to Tennessee Williams and his play The Night of the Iguana. As in The Night of the Iguana, the main character visits a woman for advice while he's under extreme stress. The play ends with the character freeing himself from this stress, but as Julian states, it's an ending he can't write, meaning Julian can't free himself from the stress he's under of this follow-up album. But in reality, I don't think the band had too much to fear. Most reviews were positive, and even recently Pitchfork went back and changed their original score from an 8 to a 9.2. 0.1 higher than their debut, which I think is fitting. And it's hard to talk about this album, or the Strokes in general, without talking about the Strokesiest song there is, Reptilia. One of the band's most famous tracks, and it's not hard to see why. The track is explosive and full of energy. It has a fantastic vocal performance and one of the sickest guitar riffs the Strokes have to offer. The track is the second most streamed song on Spotify for the band, with over 317 million listens, only behind last night's 390 million listens. Reptilia is the band's most viewed music video on YouTube with over 181 million views, and was even featured in Guitar Hero 3, which seems to be where a lot of people have heard this track from. You also have tracks like Automatic Stop, which is a much slower paced track than the rest of the album, but it keeps up the momentum. The song seems to have multiple meanings, and it can be interpreted about a hollow relationship and finally realizing that Julian is stuck in it. Things move too fast and he can't slow down because, as Julian says in the track, "I'm not your friend. I never was." So how could they slow down if they don't have a basic connection like a friendship? The song also has some bisexual undertones. She wanted him, he wanted me, and it's just a phase, it's got to pass, could be alluding to him questioning his own sexuality. You also have one of the album's singles, 1251. From the words of Julian himself, this song is about one thing, that moment right before you do it. And that really isn't that hard to interpret. There is a really cool effect achieved by lead guitarist Nick Valenci in this song, in which he made the guitar sound like a synthetic keyboard. Why he didn't use a keyboard, the world will never know. There's also an odd backstory that apparently Meet Me in the Bathroom is about Courtney Love. And she seemingly confirmed this in writing a song called But Julian, I'm a Little Older Than You, where one of the lyrics is, "Meet me in the bathroom." My personal favorite track off this album is The End Has No End, which infinitely loops into itself, as the title suggests. The music video is equally as entertaining as the song and features Mila Kunis during the height of that 70s show. The album as a whole is great, and it even went gold. It also scored the Strokes a cover of Rolling Stone magazine for the first time. They played live on Late Night with Conan O'Brien and got the band even more recognition, and even now, 18 years later, the album is still held in high regard, with tracks like Reptilia and 1251 getting tons of streams monthly on streaming platforms, and it continues to be an iconic entry in the Strokes' discography as a thrill ride of an album. Of course, the album isn't perfect. There are some minor issues I personally have with it, like the bizarre production choice to have nearly 5 seconds of silence at the beginning of most tracks, which was apparently done to separate the songs on the album more, but why put them at the beginning instead of the end of the tracks, I have no clue. And of course, there is criticism for it sounding too similar to their debut, but I personally think this album improves so much upon their previous. They're more daring, comfortable, and we're coming into their own here. I don't want that to go unnoticed. This album as a whole is a solid collection of tracks, and I've listened to it nearly nonstop since I first heard it. Even Julian himself in the past has stated that this is his favorite Strokes album. That was back in 2014, and who knows if that still holds up, but it definitely says something about this album. Let me know what you think of the album down in the comments, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. But for now, this has been Stemp, and this concludes a tribute to Room on Fire.